Welcome to the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show, a real estate investment program. Listen and learn how to use real estate to build wealth and passive income streams for you and your family. We bring you experts every day to discuss and answer your questions on everything from single-family homes all the way up to 600-plus unit apartment complexes. And now, the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show.
Welcome to the show. My name is Al Gordon, and as always, we're working on your financial freedom. On today's show, I'm going to give you some reasons why I chose investing in residential income-producing real estate over all other asset classes, to include other forms of real estate. Are you ready? Well, buckle up because we're going to get into these things. Let me give you some statistical information that I think is relevant. Since the founding of our country, real estate has accounted for over 70% of the millionaires in the United States. Yeah, go look it up. It's out there. You know, the other neat thing about that is that real estate assets have a tendency to double in value about every 20 years. It's faster in some places, it's slower in other places, but it all seems to balance out right at that 20-year sweet spot. The key factor here is that real estate has the potential and the track record to increase in value over time. You know, we make money in real estate in both up and down markets. Now, some of you are scratching your head based on what I just said, and you're thinking that concept seems counterintuitive, but it's really true. There's an old adage that buying real estate is all about location, location, location. You've heard it, I've heard it. It's out there. And I do not disagree with that concept. I think location is important. But I also believe that it goes even deeper than that. I think it's very important to understand something called timing. Now, I'm not trying to tell you you need to time the market or maybe the concept of, buy low, sell high. I mean, those are strategies, but I don't think they're important strategies. What I'm talking about is setting yourself up during an up market to not only survive, but also to succeed in a down market. It's about being prepared for any market at all. To me, that's a better strategy than worrying about the future. After all, isn't it better to know how to make money in all types of markets? Yeah, there's a lot of chatter going on out there. We know what's going on in the country. I mean, all this stuff with the election and, I'm trying to think of the right word. I'm trying to be very nice and very non-political here. We're not 100% sure who's going to be the president. Now, one side thinks one guy's going to be president. The other side thinks the other guy's going to be president. And this thing ain't over. And along with a lot of that concern, if we do have a change in who sits in the White House, it could have an impact on our economy. And that impact on our economy, it could trickle down into real estate. Now, our founder and CEO of Lifestyles Unlimited, Del Walmsley, he's ready. He's absolutely ready, as am I, as are everybody else who are members of Lifestyles Unlimited. We're ready for the market to take a turn because it's going to provide us opportunity. Along those lines, some of you might be thinking, well, aren't you concerned that you're going to be damaged because maybe the market takes a turn? No, not really. Because the way we've invested in real estate, it provides a insulation for us in case the market goes in the wrong direction. And a lot of you out there think that real estate investing is all about appreciation. That's one component of it, but that's not everything. That is absolutely not everything. There are different elements with regards to real estate investing that you need to take into consideration. And I'm going to talk about those things on today's show. Some of those things are things like, cash flow and equity capture and principal pay down and market appreciation. And of course, there's tax advantages associated with owning and operating residential income producing real estate. And there's a little thing out there called forced appreciation, which occurs in multifamily markets. And we're going to get into all of these things. But I want you to know that the most important thing for you to consider if you're going to get involved with real estate investing is to make sure you have a qualified education. And I'm not talking about go out and get your MBA. I'm not talking about, doing things like that. I'm not talking about reading a whole bunch of books that are going to give you a lot of theory, but not a lot of practical application. I'm talking about joining an organization like Lifestyles Unlimited that has a comprehensive educational program that will teach you the correct and effective ways to invest in real estate. And when I say real estate, what I'm talking about is residential income producing real estate. And the key word there was residential, meaning real estate that people live in. Because what's going on with the whole coronavirus thing is that there are sectors of the real estate industry that are being very negatively impacted. But that's not necessarily happening in the residential world because everybody needs a place to live. And when we come back, I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty about how you make money investing in real estate. We'll be back after this.
We're back with the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show. We're here to answer your questions and help you become financially free.
Welcome back to the show. So on today's show, what we're going to talk about are some of the ways that real estate investing benefits you. Yeah, because it does. It really, really does. There are essentially 5 ways every dollar you have invested in real estate makes you money. Now, technically, there is a 6th way, but that only occurs when you're invested in what is considered a true multifamily asset. Now, just to give you some of the definitions out there, single-family properties are clearly not multifamily. Duplexes, which consist of usually 2 units in the building, triplexes, which are 3 units, fourplexes, also known as quads, are 4 units. The duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes, although some people think they're multifamily because they have multiple residents in them, they're actually lumped in with single-family assets. I'm not sure how that all started. I'm not the guy that created that or I didn't tell the industry that's how it was going to work. That's just the way it works. So true multifamily are properties that have 5 or more units. Yeah, that's the definition. And what I really want you to take away from this is not an explanation of what multifamily is. I want you to understand that every dollar you invest in real estate is like having a little soldier that's working 24/7, 365 days a year. And let's talk about how those soldiers give you a great return on your investment. Now, the first and the most important one is a thing called cash flow. You become financially independent as soon as your monthly net cash flow meets or exceeds the cost of your bills. Age has absolutely nothing to do with it. You know, based on this definition, I was retired at the age of 54, mainly because I had never been exposed to any of these concepts before, or I would have accomplished it earlier in life. We have members at Lifestyles Unlimited in their 20s and 30s that have achieved this result. We also have members in their 60s and 70s that have done the same thing. The difference here is that, like me, they heard this information, and instead of, not acting, they took action to change the path they were on. And in many cases, that path involves stuffing money into a retirement account, which, my opinion on those, well, I think the retirement system that's out there, I think it's an absolutely failed system. And there's plenty of research out there that supports that assessment. So let me just give you an example of how all of this would work. Let's say you own a 40-unit apartment community. Really, the unit size doesn't really matter. But let's say that apartment community is paying you $20,000 a month in rental income. Now, you're going to have expenses associated with owning and operating that property. It's a business. That's the way it works. So let's just assume that your expenses total up to $15,000. And those expenses can be comprised of things like trash collection, utilities, maintenance costs, taxes, insurance. Maybe you choose to have property management on the property. And of course, your property leverage and any other expenses that are out there. So if we take that income of $20,000 and we subtract the expenses of $15,000, $5,000 of it would be your net cash flow. That's the money you put in your pocket each month. And you use that income to pay your personal expenses in life. So let's just say if you had bills of $4,000 per month and your passive income is $5,000 a month, when do you have to go back to work? And the short answer is this: you don't. You go back to work because you enjoy working. There are people out there that actually enjoy working, or people make an informed decision to leave a job that they're doing because maybe that job is making them miserable. Maybe that job is consuming too much of their time and their energy. And they go and they do something else that is more in line with their lifestyle. What comes to mind to me is I've met a lot of professionals that are members of Lifestyles Unlimited. What do I mean by professional? I mean people that are doctors, lawyers, CPAs, people that provide very specific services to people like you and me. And because in many of those cases, they're actually self-employed, if they're not out there doing the craft of their industry, or operating their business, I should say, they're not making any money. They're not. And because those types of people, well, they tend to have a lot of student loan debt, or they have maybe a more lavish lifestyle than I have. I'm not saying I have a bad lifestyle. I've got a great lifestyle. But maybe their expenses are higher. They can't afford to slack off and not go to work. So what they have done is they became members of Lifestyles Unlimited. They went through our educational program. They learned how to invest correctly in real estate, and they learned how to develop cash flow. And because they've developed this cash flow, they're back in control of their lives. Think about it. the cash flow that comes into your life based on correctly investing in real estate is a complete game changer. So let's talk about how to calculate the cash flow rate of return on the investment that I recommended a few moments ago. Let's say you had invested $400,000 into that apartment community, and it's paying you that $5,000 a month in passive income. Well, that works out to be $60,000 a year in cash flow. So simple math tells me that you're making a 15% cash-on-cash return on your investment. And that's just one of the ways that real estate investing performs on our behalf. And I'll get into the rest of them when we come back.
Welcome back to the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show. Now, let's get back to your map to financial freedom.
Welcome back to the show. So if you're just joining us, I'm talking about some of the reasons that I have chosen to invest in residential income producing real estate. And by making that decision, it's had a very dramatic effect on my life, and it's a very, very positive effect. Now, in the last segment, I was kind of talking about some of the professionals out there that, you know, doctors, lawyers, CPAs, people like that, that are self-employed and they have a tendency to work very, very hard because, well, you know, they probably have some student loan debt and other things, and they tend to work in an industry that has the ability to pay a better rate than maybe you or I could command out in the general workforce marketplace. But the one thing I didn't tell you was this. We have a lot of those folks that became members of Lifestyles Unlimited, and I've met them. And one of the things that they achieved by investing correctly in real estate is they regained control over their lives. So as opposed to them having to go out and work 60, 70, 80 hours a week, they bought back their time. Now, many of them still work in the specific field that they were in, but they do it a little bit differently now. I've got a friend named George, and he's a physician. He was working, he told me, it was 60 hours a week on average in his medical practice. By investing in real estate and by taking advantage of all the things that real estate made available to him and his wife, he was able to sell that practice. And when he sold that practice, he took the proceeds from that practice and he bought more real estate, which allowed him a greater ability to achieve income passively. In other words, he doesn't have to go out and work for it. What he does now, he still practices medicine. I mean, he's got his medical license and everything like that. None of that's changed. What he's not doing is working those 60 hours a week in the medical field, seeing patients that pay him and dealing with insurance companies that want to control his business model. What he does now is he spends 2 days a week volunteering his time and his expertise as a doctor at clinics that provide healthcare services to people that cannot afford healthcare. He also goes away for periods of time and volunteers his time with entities like Doctors Without Borders and things like that. And I'll tell you what, the big thing for him is that now he practices medicine and he enjoys it. He really feels like he's making a difference in people's lives because he's making a difference in people's lives. He's not poring over the balance sheet of his business. He's pouring over the people that he's providing care for. And real estate created that catalyst for him to do that. Now, another way that we make money in real estate is a little thing called equity capture. There is a difference between the purchase price of a particular asset to include all related closing costs, and this number becomes your all-in amount, and the appraised value of the asset when you get it all ready and fixed up. Let me give you an example. When you buy distressed property, let's say, I'll tell you what, I'm going to move away from multifamily because the numbers could get real crazy on us and I don't want to lose you. So let's jump into, not stick with, but let's just jump into single family. Let's say you buy a single family home and you rehab it for an all-in cost of $80,000. After you complete the rehab, you have it appraised, and the appraiser determines that the property is now worth $100,000 based on what comparable sales in the neighborhood are selling for. You've effectively captured $20,000 in equity in that property. See, what you're doing is you're buying something at wholesale, fixing it up, and then you're having it appraised at retail values. This is an unrealized capital gain, and it immediately goes on your personal balance sheet as wealth. It's called net equity. Now, if you're wondering, how do I calculate the equity capture rate of return on that investment? Well, here's how I do it. Because you acquired the asset correctly, your total out-of-pocket expense on that property cost you $10,000. And since you captured $20,000 in equity, when you divide that by the $10,000 you put into the deal, your rate of return is 200%. And it gets better. You actually have $30,000 in equity in that home because remember, you put $10,000 of your own money into the deal. But you captured 2/3 of your total equity. Now, I'll be the first to tell you, those of you thinking that you want to invest in turnkey properties, in other words, somebody went out, fixed it up. These are usually flippers, and maybe they work with a property management company that provides a resident to that property. And it's turnkey in the fact that you're able to just show up, put your money into the deal, and take over the property and operate the property, and then get the cash flow off of that. But what you're buying is an asset at retail value. You're not buying an asset at wholesale value. See, there is money to be made when you buy assets correctly, and you have to buy them as wholesale properties. And then you have to understand how to fix them up correctly, and then find great residents for the property, and then capture the equity. And it's not that hard to do. We teach you how to do all of that. Now, there's another component that makes us money, and it effectively increases your equity in the property. It's called principal paydown. With any asset you acquire, you're going to put the proper amount of leverage on the property. That means you'll place a mortgage instrument on the asset. For all you Dave Ramsey fans out there that feel like I just took your livelihood away, stick with me, because putting the right amount of leverage on a property allows you to acquire more assets since you haven't sunk all of your money into one particular asset. It also means that your rates of return are actually better, and it allows for multiple assets to appreciate over time. And I'll get into appreciation when we come back from the break. So let me give you an example. Going back to the house example that I just gave you. You have a mortgage on that house for $70,000. A simple mortgage analysis tells me that if you put a 4% note on that house over a 30-year amortization, you're going to have a principal pay down on that note of $1,233 in the first year, which means that each month when you pay the note payment, you're gaining over $100 a month in additional equity in that property. Now, we're going to break. When we come back, I'm going to finish up this concept of the principal pay down, and we'll be back right after these messages.
Here's Lifestyles Unlimited founder and CEO, self-made multimillionaire, and national radio host, Del Walmsley, on getting the information you need to get through this.
So you ask yourself, isn't this the wrong time to get out of the stock market? Very well could be. But maybe it might go down. And then you ask yourself, man, if I would have had some of that money, I could have used it. People are going to be afraid. And the people who are in real estate that are losing money are going to be afraid. And they're going to want to get out. And when they do, we're going to be able to go in and buy at very advantageous prices that are going to change our family's future, quite honestly. So you need information on how to do that. You need the knowledge of how to get through this. You need to get into Lifestyles right now.
Lifestyles Unlimited has been helping people succeed since 1990. Join us for our free online real estate workshop and learn the 7 principles we teach to run our businesses and provide for our families. Register at lifestylesunlimitedworkshop.com.
Warning. Listening to the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show will change your life. We will teach you how to create wealth and passive income so you can be financially free. And now, back to your host.
In the last segment, we were talking about principal pay down, and one of the key takeaways is that when you pay a monthly mortgage payment on your rental property, part of that payment will reduce the principal balance on that note. The other interesting thing about amortized interest is that over time, the principal amount of your payment actually increases, while the interest amount decreases. That's just the way amortized interest works. So if you're wondering how to calculate your rate of return on just the first year of principal paydown, based on the example that I gave you, that $100,000 house that you put $10,000 into the deal, your first principal paydown will be $1,233 in that first year, which is a reduction in the debt and a return of 12.3%. Isn't it kind of interesting how even the one way we make the less return on our money in real estate is doing better than what your financial planner told you should be getting for a rate of return in your mutual funds? Yeah. Kind of interesting, huh? Now, earlier in the show, I mentioned we were going to talk about market appreciation. So let me just restate what I said at the beginning of the show. Since the beginning of our country, real estate has tended to double in value every 20 years. Now, in order to do that, you actually need less than a 3.5% increase per year averaged over the 20 years. The reason it's not a flat 5%, because, I mean, 5 times 20 is 100? Okay. Is that the value in each year is, each subsequent year is based on the previous year's value. So if your property goes up in year 1, 3.5%, then in year 2, it's going to go up 3.5%, but it's going to go up based on a slightly higher value. I know math can be very tricky, and I'm not trying to blow your mind before the weekend. So sticking with the house example, the one that's worth $100,000 after you rehabbed it, let's say it increases only 3% in year 1, or only $3,000. So in order to calculate the rate of return on just the first year of appreciation, remember, you only put $10,000 of your own money into the deal. And when that property goes up by that $3,000 amount, you take that $3,000, you divide it by the $10,000 you put into the deal. That's a 30% return on your money. Yeah. Now, I'm going to get into a concept that's probably going to hurt your head, but we're going to go there, because one of the most significant ways that we make money has to do with the tax advantages. And this is where it gets super interesting, because as a real estate investor, you're still going to have to pay taxes, but not the way you think. In fact, real estate assets allow you to start paying the lowest income taxes of any for-profit group in America. So let me tell you why. Let's go ahead and stick with that $100,000 house. What's going to happen is your CPA will deduct the value of the land associated with that asset. The reason for this is that the IRS does not allow what's called depreciation to be taken on land, only on the improvements made upon the land. So the concept there is land is here forever and land never goes away. So as such, you're allowed to depreciate the remaining amount of the asset. The logic is really that you're, quote, wearing out the useful life of the improvements made to the overall property, despite the fact that the property is actually appreciating in value. Is your head hurting yet? Well, if it is, I'm sorry. But let's keep those numbers simple again. So what I'm going to do in my example is I'm going to say that for our $100,000 house, the land value of that asset is $14,000. Which means you're allowed to depreciate the remaining $86,000 worth of value of that asset. Now, here's how it works. The IRS allows you to depreciate the asset over what's considered a 27.5-year period for residential income producing properties. Now, there are other depreciation schedules out there, but they're for other types of real estate assets and require depreciation actually over a longer period of time. So they're not quite as effective as depreciation taken on rental assets. Now, there's also a thing called cost segregation. I'm not going to get into cost segregation. It's kind of a more advanced form of depreciation. It allows you to take even more write-offs faster based on the type of component of the asset that you're depreciating. And I could probably do a whole show on cost segregation, and I would definitely make your head hurt. So we're not going to go there right now. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, we've got that property. So if we divide the $86,000 worth of value that has nothing to do with the physical land by the allowable 27.5 years that the IRS gives us to depreciate that asset, you're going to wind up with a depreciation write-off of $3,127. Essentially, the IRS is saying that the house lost $3,127 in that first year and each subsequent year in value, which translates into a loss on your tax return. So you're allowed the depreciation even though you also received income on that asset. Now, we have found that single-family assets in the markets that we invest in have the ability to return, on average, around $400 a month in passive income. If you annualize that amount, that means you've made $4,800 a year in income. That's like giving yourself a $4,800 a year raise off of just one house. So here's where the depreciation comes into play. If you have an income of $4,800, but you also have a phantom loss of $3,127 in depreciation write-off, that leaves you with a balance of $1,673. And even though you put $4,800 into your pocket, because of the depreciation, you're only liable for taxes against the $1,673 that's remaining after you take that depreciation write-off. Yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. Now, there is another advantage that occurs when you decide to sell the asset and you use a 1031 exchange to do that. And I've just sold 3 assets using a 1031 exchange. So I'm kind of familiar with how this works. So as an example, you sell a property that made you, let's go multifamily, because let's go back to big. We started big, let's go back to big. You sell a property that makes you $60,000 a year, and you make a capital gain of $300,000 on that property. So what you do is you turn around and you buy an even bigger property with the proceeds that makes you $80,000 per year with that profit. And because you did a 1031 exchange and you did it correctly, you were able to defer any capital gains taxes due on the sale of that property, plus any recaptured depreciation expense, and move it onto the follow-on asset. The big thing there is that you were able to use all of your available proceeds from the sale of that property in order to acquire the follow-on property. You didn't have to carve out a portion of that profit to pay all of those taxes. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So the math to determine your rate of return when it comes to the tax benefits of real estate depends on a lot of factors. And it also depends on what tax bracket you're in. But let me leave you with this thought. What if you could have all of the taxes that you've paid to the government on your income streams going back maybe 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, whatever, and you had that money available to you now to invest it and invest it correctly? What kind of financial position would you be in today? Now, there's a paradox for you. I'll tell you what, real estate investing has absolutely changed my life. It has changed the lives of the 50,000 members of Lifestyles Unlimited. And if you would like to find out how to become a member, go to freeworkshoplivestream.com. And remember, it's not the money, it's the lifestyle.
The Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show is for entertainment purposes only. Please consult a professional regarding your personal investment needs. Nothing presented on the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show constitutes an endorsement, recommendation, offer, or solicitation to buy or sell any product or security.